This is Talk It Out, the Women's Agenda podcast. Tune in for your weekly download on the latest news, trends and ideas affecting your career or your business. Here's your host, Angela Priestley.
Hello and welcome to the Women's Agenda podcast. I am in the studio here with Georgie Dent, our contributing editor on Women's Agenda. How are you, Georgie?
Very well, thank you.
And our special guest today is Lorraine Murphy. How are you, Lorraine?
I'm good. I've had a lot of green tea this morning over breakfast. So
you mentioned 4 cups of green tea.
Yes, which is a lot for me. Well, a pot, so 4 small cups.
And you don't drink coffee?
No.
Okay.
If
Maybe this is something I need to take away from this podcast today.
People need to slow this podcast down to understand what I was saying. Yeah, it's not good. It's not pretty.
Yeah, that's. I feel like I should go there. It's not so much the over talking; it's the undersleeping that affects me. So, so today we want to talk about quite a big variety of things, but we really want to discuss Lorraine's career and some of the things that she's been doing. But part of that will play into assumptions made about women in business and assumptions made about women as parents as well. And we've got some interesting examples of that. And also how to, I can say, get shit done.
Yes.
Get shit done. How to get remarkably organised for the end of the year. And there's another assumption I'm making about women and our listeners, that that's what you're looking to do. But we are getting close to the year, and it is a thing that needs to, that kind of, I don't know if it's artificial or not, but that deadline that is upon us that makes us feel like we need to get all these things done. So we'll talk about that a little bit later in the conversation. But Lorraine, I'll first share just a couple of things about you with our audience. So Lorraine founded the Remarkables group in 2012 and saw it grow to 7 figures, seeing Lorraine named a BRW Fast Starter and going on to be nominated for a number of awards and winning a number of those awards as well.
Including finalists 2 years in a row for the Women's Agenda Leadership Awards.
Yes,
thank you guys.
First as well, I think, in the Emerging Entrepreneur of the Year category.
2 years in a row. I didn't get it, yeah. One day I'll win a Women's Agenda Award.
Well, yes, there'll be more opportunities. So 2019 again. So stay tuned.
I'll just keep going. You might just create an award for the most entries, especially for me.
Or the most remarkably organised person.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
business. That would have to be you.
Yes.
Easy.
Yes.
So that category's
I'll just
sorted.
hack the awards.
So if anyone would like to sponsor that award in 2019, we are very much open to the conversation. So while you were growing this business, you wrote your first best-selling book, Remarkability, in 2016, which I remember reading.
Yes,
at
my
the
baby.
time,
yes.
and I took a lot away from that. And then you also wrote Get Remarkably Organised in 2018, which I have also read, and I've been promising for a few months to pass on to Georgie, but I haven't been organised enough yet.
And my poor life is suffering for it, let me tell you.
I'll send you one.
I actually have been on
she has
Angela's
been
case,
pestering
but
me,
not
so
to worry.
I'll send you a copy of your own and then you can move on.
And then in very early 2018, Lorraine announced that she was selling her. I say her. Anyway, you announced that you were selling your business, the Remarkable Group, to your business partner to pursue what you described as soul on fire work, which we can get to discussing. So you have this GSD or get shit organised, get shit done rather approach to life. And so you wrote that second book also while you were on maternity leave with your first child through 2017. So 2018, one of the things I remember about the first time I spoke to you, because I think I did interview you just after you were nominated for one of those first awards, which had been sort of 2013 or something. And you told me that very clearly... I very clearly got the sense that you are an organised person, but very much a goal-setting person and goal-oriented person.
Yeah.
And that you said things like that you would write down your goals on pieces of paper or whatever, something that could stick in your shower or somewhere where you could stick, where you'd see it every day.
Yeah, laminated in the shower.
Laminated in the shower.
Yeah.
Do you still have you had a goal approach to 2018? Have you seen those goals follow through, or what's this year been like for you?
Oh, God. This year's been insane. So we had Lexi, our daughter, in June last year. So mid-2017 she came along, and then I sold the business in December. Then I decided I needed to press the eject button. So I went to Bali on an Eat, Pray, Love nappy change with Lexi for 2 months, and then came back and went, holy crap, I've got to start my new business, whatever this looks like. We then did an attempted tree change to the Gold Coast. I'm exhausted just talking about this. We did an attempted tree change to the Gold Coast. 3 months later, we said, oh, we need to get back down to Sydney. So I honestly feel, so when you asked me about my goals, like I absolutely set goals for this year. And then I just feel like the wheels just came off because things were changing so quickly. So I've almost got more like micro goals. So I know now what I need to do between now and Christmas, for example. I've got a plan, a business plan. But I'm actually really excited to head into 2019. Yes. Oh God, that's scary. 2019. And have a really clear plan, because I feel like this year was just, and I think this was a really good lesson for me, because I've always identified as such a goal setting person. And then I was almost treating it as another opportunity to beat myself up that, look at your goals every day. And why isn't this thing happening? But to be very honest, there was so much happening on the home front and my mindset front that I just couldn't do it this year. I just didn't feel like I've felt in the past, in the last few years. So I'm really excited to head into next year with the stability on the home front and knowing where we're living, and that I'm not selling businesses or starting businesses, that I feel like next year is just about that stability. So that's a very honest answer. I would love to tell you my goals are stuck up in the shower and I tick them off every day, but the reality hasn't been that this year.
I guess your life has changed, obviously, and people's situations change. I mean, what I like about how you mentioned the move to the Gold Coast and then moved back after 3 months. I mean, clearly there's something that says, hey, we may have set this as a goal, but, it's also okay to just go, hey, that isn't actually going to work for us at the moment, and we'll pull back from that goal and do something else. Yeah,
for sure. It was a massive U-turn, that one. And I, as part of my goals at the start of this year, was move to the Gold Coast. And then that all of a sudden isn't what we want to do anymore. Therefore, and I think that's the thing. I actually wrote about this. I send out a fortnightly love letter to my community, and one of the things I wrote about last week was giving yourself permission to change your mind. So for example, actually right now I should be just coming back from Perth. I should have done an event in Perth on Saturday. I only had 7 people buy tickets. It's sold out everywhere else in Australia, and I've had this whole internal dialogue with myself around, I should be going to Perth because 7 people have bought tickets. I've put it out there that I'm going to Perth. I don't want to look like I'm failing. And I said, well, I don't want to go to Perth. I said that in July. So we obviously reached out to people as soon as we could to share that. And we've arranged immediate refunds and everything. But I think it's important for us to remember that we do have permission to change our minds, that we're not locked into whatever it is we said we do, particularly if we're staying with that course of action because we're afraid of what other people will think if we change our mind. So I think that's the journey I've been on this year. It's okay to change your mind.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess it is unusual, isn't it, to be able to constantly set goals in a linear fashion and for them all to come off. I mean, I don't think in business, in personal life, I mean, it just doesn't, I don't think it's ever that perfect. I'm fascinated to know about how you sort of came to the decision that it was time for you to exit your business.
Yes.
Just because I feel like for someone who's started a business, the way you did, and it was, it was you.
Yes.
And then,
and it was so linked to your brand. Exactly. That's exactly what I see and picture you doing, and it's gone so well. Like I say, you won so many awards. I mean, how did you come to that decision, and how hard has it been also?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it because I too much. Writing my 3rd book at the moment, talked about this whole in the book recently. I was writing it. So I brought on a business partner into the business with me in February last year, who was fantastic. We had a brilliant relationship over the time that she was in the business. Excuse me. So the plan was I would take 3 months to step back from the business on entrepreneur's version of maternity leave. I'm doing inverted quotation marks here. And in that time, my plan was to write the book, because I was aiming to have the book written before Lexi arrived. But between bringing on a business partner, getting her fully onboarded, my motivation just wasn't there to focus on the book. So I mostly wrote the book when Lexi was teeny tiny. And so I took 3 months. I came back into the business via a 2-week study tour to the UK. So I was visiting family back in Ireland, and myself and Wade, my husband, and Lexi obviously went to London, and I had some meetings in London about, the plan was we were going to take the business global, and I was going to lead the expansion into the UK this year. Basically, that was the plan. So that was the whole plan. And my goal with the Remarkables group is always, we'll take it global. We'll sell to a massive multinational media agency or publisher. Then I'll do a couple of years earn out. And then I'll be free to write, speak and mentor full time, which is, as you mentioned at the start, Ange, that's my soul on fire stuff. So I came back into the business, and I remember one day I went to an industry conference, because part of getting back into it was like, I should go and reconnect with all my industry connections and be visible back in the industry and all that kind of thing. And I went to this conference, and Lexi was at home with her nanny, so I went back. It was 3.5 months. I was in the business 3 days a week. And I remember this day going to this conference, and it was so coming from a place of ego that I needed, not in terms of my ego, but it was like I should be networking and I should be talking to new people and I should be drumming up new clients and all this kind of thing. And I was just miserable at the conference all day. I just didn't find it engaging. It was nothing to do with the conference organisers. I just wasn't engaged at all. And I really missed Lexi, as in like heart pain missed her. I just wanted to be squeezing her. It was the strangest experience. And I think in the past, if I had gone to a conference like that, it would have been so as part of my purpose that I was there and I was networking and connecting, and I just didn't want to be there. And I remember for some reason I didn't have any milk left in the fridge or the freezer. So Eva, our nanny, had to pop Lexi in the back of the car. I pumped in the disabled toilet. And disabled toilets, I don't know if you guys know, or if you pumped in many toilets.
Yeah.
But you know, the disabled toilets don't
toilets.
have lids on them sometimes. So you're like sitting on the toilet seat, literally the toilet seat.
Yes.
Pumping, going, this is fucked. What, why am I feeling so miserable? I just wanted to be breastfeeding her, not pumping into a bottle that then she was going to get, whatever. And Eva did a drive-by onto Martin Place. She couldn't stop. I just feel so emotional thinking about this. She couldn't stop, so she slowed down to like 10 kilometers per hour. She rolled down the window, and I just kind of aimed my milk bottle in the window. And I could see Lexi's little feet just sticking out the back. And I just went like, I just want to be with her. So I pulled the pin on the conference at about 3 o'clock, raced home, and Eva was out for a walk. Never come home. And I took a little selfie with her that day, actually, and it's one of my favourite photos of us because I swear I can see the love emanating off me for her. And for me, that was just a sign, I think, that maybe this isn't the industry that I want to be in anymore. And if I'm going to be leaving Lexi for days like that, that day that I leave her needs to deliver such massive ROI, so return on investment. And I don't mean in terms of dollars. I mean that I need to feel so fulfilled with the time that I'm leaving her that I don't feel like I need to miss her. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And the trade-off just wasn't there. I didn't feel like what I was engaged in that day was fulfilling enough for me to be missing time with my 3.5-month-old baby, or 4-month-olds maybe she was at that point. So that was the start of it, I think. And then the more I started to observe, I was like, okay, well, if I go along the route that we've decided we're going to go along, we do the earn it, blah, 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 that's 8 years' time. So Lexi's going to be 8. We already talked about this as we started recording, like that time goes so quickly. And I just said, well, maybe I could just cut straight to the Soul on Fire stuff. Maybe I don't need to go through the whole growing it, going to the UK, being there in the hustle, brand new to a new market, that I've never I've worked in before, but it was a very long time ago. So that was kind of the decision. And as soon as it occurred to me, I was like, yeah, that's absolutely the right thing to do. But then the challenge was Natalie, my business partner, we'd only really worked together for 6 months. So then I had to call her and say, look, this business partner you thought you were going to have for the next 5 years. And to her credit, she was incredibly understanding and incredibly professional. So we embarked on a journey of tying up the business so that it would become her baby. And I think it was only 7 weeks time we did that, which was a heroic achievement given how much admin and, from acquiring Women's Agenda, it's a huge amount of admin and finance and contracts. And my gosh, it was intense. So yeah, that's the very long answer to your question.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And so then this year, I follow you on Instagram, so I think Georgie and I both do. So we've seen some of the amazing trips that you've done and going to Bali and various other things, which have you felt like you've been able to pursue that Soul on Fire work? And what does that look like?
Yes, I have 100%. Soul on Fire stuff for me, I've probably got three different situations that I would find myself in going, oh, my soul is on fire right now. And one is just sitting in flow writing my books. Like that's just, those times where you just forget to eat. And I love to eat. I do not forget to eat. So when I'm forgetting to eat,
just
I'm
doesn't
like,
happen for
whoa,
me.
Really? Well, it doesn't normally for me. Like my mom goes crazy. Like I'll be eating my dinner and I'll already be planning out like my meals for the next 48 hours. And she's like, just enjoy the meal you're eating. So when I forget to eat, or I'm just like, okay, I'll just pee in a few minutes, and I'm just so in flow. So for me, that's writing the books is number one. The second is mentoring someone. So if it's an emerging entrepreneur or just someone, they don't even necessarily need to be an entrepreneur, but just helping someone unlock something about their life. And it's very much, as you said, Ange, the get shit done approach. Like it's like, okay, let's just grip this up. What do we need to do in order to get you to where you want to get to? That's Soul on Fire. And then speaking to groups, that's just... As someone who was terrified of public speaking, that I get to do that now and I get paid for it and I love it. That's just awesome. So I've done a lot. Because I came back, started the business really in May, and I've done a lot. There's been a Get Remarkably Organised online program. I've done a national tour with the Get Remarkably Organised book. I've started a clan, which is like a membership program for entrepreneurs. I've taken my first retreat to Bali. It's been pretty epic. So it's been awesome. But next year my word is consolidation. So picking a few things and then just going really deep into them.
Yeah, great. Amazing.
But it's so hard because it's a bright, shiny thing. I'm like, I could do this and this. And then I had an idea when I was in Bali with so I had a group of 9 women over there for a couple of weeks ago, which was just magical. But I had an idea when I was over there going, oh my God, myself and Wade could run retreats for couples. So he could go off and do blokey stuff with the boys during the day. I know I'm generalizing massively. I could go do the female stuff with the girls and then we'd come back together at the end of the day. But I was like, no, consolidate.
Yeah, I know. I think that's
too
hard
many
as a
ideas, not
business
enough
owner.
time.
I do that as well. I've just got, and it comes back to because you mentioned permission to change your mind. And I think I change my mind all the time. And it's, but it does because there are so many ideas and so many things that we can pursue. And one of the most difficult things idea, but actually finding to pursue and which work the best for you and which one's going to work the best for the business.
Yes.
And hopefully be profitable at the same time.
Yeah.
So
I actually did something, you might find this useful, because I found myself to Bali and I've been in full, I don't say I'm in full mum mode, but I've been on Lexi's schedule for 17 months. He's taken her for weekends or she's been overnight with a nanny for a night or two at a time or whatever. But for me, not getting away, God, that says it all, doesn't it? But leaving and stepping, incredible. I actually had time to think. I felt like deep thinking for the first time in a long time. And something I did was I wrote down all the projects I've done or I'm in the process of doing or want to do next year. I think it was 12 or 13 in total. And I put them through 3 filters. So the first one is, what's the stuff that I love doing? Like, what's the thing that if you're engaged in, you just light up because you love doing it? The second thing I did was, what will have the most long-term impact? Because I could do an event for, I don't know, a dinner party for 10 Instagram followers tomorrow, which would be so much fun, and God knows I love food and a lot of my followers love, but is that actually going to happen in 5 years time, 5-10 years time? And then the third thing I looked at, financial, I rated everything out of 10 for each of those 3, and that's actually how I got to the point of, okay, these are the few things I'm going to focus
and gave them a number.
Because then it's not emotional.
Yeah.
It's actually based on logic, which is Wade's biggest challenge with me. He's like, everything's so emotional. So I actually injected some logic into it, and that was really, really helpful.
But see, it's interesting there because obviously you have to balance and not everything can be purely driven by emotion.
Yes.
But isn't it you decision about what was right for you about your business based on it was emotions?
Yeah.
And I think in some ways, obviously we write and talk a lot about the challenges of having babies and being a mother and being responsible, for this tiny little person. And there are definitely challenges that come with that. But I think one of the upsides that women in the sort of current paradigm get when you have a child is you actually do get to take a breather for a little bit. Obviously not everyone gets paid parental leave. It's not necessarily a long time, but your life really changes and you do actually get to reflect in that moment about what you actually want to do next. And I think the way that a lot of men work at the moment is that they are still considered the breadwinner. And when they have a baby, we know from the statistics they're not taking huge chunks of time out of work. So their day-to-day life doesn't necessarily change in the way that if you're a mother of a newborn and you're home, what you want, your purpose, it really does, it doesn't necessarily change, but it crystallizes, I think. And I think what you experienced is not necessarily uncommon. I don't think, to have sort of thought, well, actually, if I am going to be leaving this little baby for the day, it has to be for something that's really lighting my fire.
Yeah, yeah.
And do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I think
the thing is, you're obviously clever because you then also put things through a logical filter.
Very recently.
And you do.
As of 2 weeks
No,
ago,
but I
that.
think Anne's right. You're a very organised person. You've always, your books have always focused on the fact you have approached things with a sort of structured approach,
Yeah.
which I think is, probably part of why you've been successful. Because I think, starting a business, having systems and having a structured approach is very useful.
Can I just speak to that for a second? Because I saw a healer when I was in Bali, when I went there in March, April. And he said something that really, really resonated with me because I was saying, I want some direction around my business and all that kind of thing. And he just looked at me. He's a real Oka, 62-year-old Aussie bloke. Like, he's not what you expect any healer. And he just said to me, he's like, babe, you're still in a trance. I was like, what do you mean? And he said, you've got to a 10-month-old baby, you're still breastfeeding. He's like, you're still in a trance. He said, how else do you think someone like you, who literally did not have time to scratch their bums before you had a baby, every minute was filled, you were scheduled, you were going to meetings, you were hustling, you were meditating, like everything was filled. He said, how else? It's nature's way of forcing you to slow down. How else do you have time to change her nappy 10 times a day, that you're happy to sit there and breastfeed her for, what, I don't know, in the early days, 7 hours a day plus? So I found that really fascinating, because I think, and the reason I just want to speak to that after you said that, Georgie, is that I did put a lot of pressure on myself around, what am I going to do? How are we going to plan this? And it gave me a lot of understanding that why I wasn't feeling as gung-ho as I used to is because I was technically still in a trance. Like, your body's still creating all these hormones, whether you're breastfeeding or not. You're nurturing this human. So I do think a lot, and I talk to a lot of women who say, I'm going to maternity leave, I'm going to figure out what I want to be doing with my life, and then 6 months later they're like, why can't I figure this out? But I think there's a whole biophysical thing going on that it's, I would hate for anyone to feel the pressure to go and have a big realization like I had, because I don't think our bodies are necessarily equipping us to do that when our babies are still very small.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
I know we
Also,
went on a massive
yes.
tangent there, but I thought that was important to address.
No, and I think you're absolutely right, because it talks to the issue that a lot of people face, is that it's not necessarily easy to, even if they had an ideal world, to make that sort of work.
Yeah, it's not easy at all, because
not
you might
easy.
not have the resources, you might not have the care in place, you might not have a partner available to help you.
And
You
the
might
energy.
not have the energy, but you might not have the vision of what you've wanted. And also, I mean, finding work that ticks all of the boxes for, it's not just, none of us necessarily just get to work on our purpose. There's other factors at play. And so, I think that's an important thing to realise, that it's not simple to sort of expect your life to change.
That's very wise of that healer to talk about it being in a trance, because, I mean, I guess I'd be making an assumption here and thinking that he probably hasn't experienced that himself. He may have in another way, but I think that is extremely wise. And I know that we've written about this also, and I know that from my experience, the first time I took maternity leave, I saw it as a real transition, and that's what was really hard about it, and that's also what I wasn't necessarily expecting. And part of that transition was the idea that, first of all, you have to get past the maternity leave, because it does sound like you're going on a holiday. It feels like, and even taking, I was like, I'm having my baby in September, and I'll go into summertime and I'll be able to go to the beach with my newborn, which never happened once.
Well, the beach is better as they approach sort of 6 months onwards. Tiny little babies in the sunshine. It's not.
Yeah, exactly. I hadn't actually thought that far through, because I hadn't read anything on what would actually happen once I would have a baby. But part of the part that I found so difficult was that you have to kind of mourn your old life. You have to sort of say, that isn't coming back. This is who I am, and it's, and you find things to celebrate and who you're going to be going forward. But at the same time, you're not going to have that time. You're not going to have the control over your day. You're not ever really going to get through a day or a night or an hour or a minute without thinking about your child and what might be happening, and all the bad things that could happen to them as well. There is this real transition that you have to go through and then accept, and then take that if you return to work or however, whatever you're doing going forward, take that into your new routine and what that might mean for that new routine too.
I had a lady come on my retreat. She travelled from the UK. She had a 2.5-year-old. She has a 2.5-year-old daughter and an 8-month-old daughter. So and breast pumped the whole time. She was in Bali for a week. It's like, you're a rock star. So she was in this spot where she said, I don't know who I am anymore. And she backed her kids up. Obviously, the babies were very close together. And she had hypergravidaria.
Is that the
very
condition?
extreme morning sickness?
That's
Kate
what
Middleton. That's what everyone says.
had.
Kate Middleton had it.
Yes.
So she was very, very sick. So her plan was she was going to start her business while she was pregnant and then go on maternity leave and all that kind of thing. And she was just sitting here, this woman, in this one-on-one with me and crying, just going, who am I? I don't know who I am anymore. And I just said to her, the old you's dead. And she looked at me as if to go, and I said, but she is. You can't just erase the fact that you've had 2 children, you've been really sick, you've either been vomiting or tending to a vomiting newborn for 2.5 years. And it was a bit of a moment for her. And what I meant by that, it wasn't that, you know, you can never be successful or effective again, but that is an old you. She's not coming back. And the old Lorraine, when I had Lexi, she's not coming back. And it's, for me, I see Lexi's birth as being a rebirth for me. We're going down a very spiritual track. I didn't think we'd be going down this track. But it was my rebirth. And like, Jesus, rebirth isn't straightforward. You know, it's not uncomplicated. It's not without its intensity. So for me, I've tried to reframe that experience around it's not getting back to the old Lorraine. And I'm not saying you did this, Ange, but it's about rebirthing and, well, what does this new Lorraine look like? And we're fully woo-woo now, but I went to a cacao ceremony when I was in Bali in March. And it was full on like hippie shit, like it was hardcore. They were calling in the Native American medicine men, and it was very, very happy clappy. So we each got a card at the end of the session, and that represented a particular animal. And I got the bat, and I was like, oh Jesus, like that's a bit crap. Like the lady next to me got a mountain lion. I was like, I want to be a mountain lion. But when I actually, bat actually means rebirth, and I think that's what I was in Bali to do, was to start to unpack. Well, who is, what bits keep, or what new bits do we want to put in? So yes, massive tangent, but I think a lot of us go down that track, and I know I did a old me, and born with the birth of our children. So it's about defining what that new us is.
Yeah.
And I'd be fascinated to talk to you guys, because you've got 3 kids, Georgie, and you've got two and a bit. Like, do you get reborn every time? Scope of this conversation. Hopefully we do have more children every time. I don't.
Stress.
You need my new book. It's coming next year.
So I need the new book, but I'm not sure. It's definitely been different, and it's I think it's been interesting to see, I guess, the differences in siblings and how different little people can be, which is really wonderful to see these little personalities that shine through and can be,
and you see it so
drastically
early.
Contrasting so early.
Yeah.
I think that there is part of the adjustment with sort of subsequent kids is not as dramatic as with the first.
Yes.
Because I think so much of when we first had our first, that overwhelming sensation of being responsible 24/7 for another little person, and that, you know, that there's no one else coming, you know, you are feeding, you're going to be getting up in the night, you're going to be feeding. And then what I found when our second and then definitely our third came, I felt it was done. And so, and I did have the perspective, you know, that was misguided, because I assumed with our second that eventually she would sleep like our first had, and she never did. But that's fine.
Oh, Jesus.
But the point was, when she came, I just loved being back in that baby bubble, because I wasn't terrified.
Yes.
I wasn't terrified with our first one, but I was like, oh, we've done this. And I'm in the habit of being responsible. I've been responsible. When we had our second, our eldest was 2.5. And so I was familiar with being, you know, a parent. And so in that way, the adjustment was less dramatic.
Yeah. And I think that was true for me as well, that I'd sort of felt like I'd gone through that transition. I'd mourned that old me that I mentioned that I went through. And the second time, I think that it was that I felt I enjoyed the newborn experience a lot more. And I think that part of enjoy it was because you knew that certain things would end and that it was okay, that certain things didn't go according to the plan that I never had anyway. Yeah. But there's a certain way. And so that, you know, that I remember I'd just kind of walk around with him in the Beyond. And the first time I was like, he's going to be 18. I'm still going to be carrying him in a Beyond to get him to sleep. But this time I'm like, no, I like walking around with him like this, and that's fine. So it's funny because we were going to get onto this.
I'm so sorry, I've taken you on so many tangents.
No, it was nice to go on some
now.
different tangents, but about assumptions about that are made about women, about parents as well. And this comes from a few examples. So we might just touch on this topic just for a small amount of time before moving on to, because I really want to get into some get organised tips.
This is a commercial break for Work It Out. We'll be back in a moment. But if you're interested in being a sponsor for Work It Out or Women's Agenda, just drop us a line and let us know. That's womensagenda.com.au.
But Lorraine, we published a piece from you.
I read it
last year. The one from
the other one. Yeah, go ahead.
We published a different piece today that Georgie will speak to about I'll let you talk to that. But first, I'll just go to Lorraine's thing that we did last year about, and obviously this was probably in that time that you mentioned when you were looking for that to do that global expansion. You were overseas. You had your 3-month-old Lexi there with you, and talk us through this email that landed in your that you later shared on LinkedIn and later shared on Women's Agenda as well. And,
I called
that
it
process.
Emailgate.
Emailgate, yeah.
I was there, as I mentioned earlier, as a bit of a listening exercise just to get as many meetings in with industry peeps over in London to really just listen to what was happening in the industry there, because I didn't know, did we just pick up our existing model and drop it in the UK, or did we need to create a bespoke model for that industry, or for that market? So I approached, I think I locked in 12, 13 different meetings. Lexi was 11 weeks old, I think, at the time. So I would go to the meetings. Yeah, I got very good at taking the pram on the tube and all that kind of thing. It was such a great adventure. And, they just sleep all the time anyway. Like, she pooed, breastfed and slept. Like, it was brilliant. So I had reached out to...
Mine didn't.
Oh, sorry.
Anyway.
We did land a very, very chilled child. We hit the jackpot. She's amazing. And so I reached out to various different contacts, relevant contacts in Australia for my network, and said, look, if you know anyone in London, who should I catch up with? And one of my clients from a brand said, oh, this person who I knew this person, she was the lead of the client's account in their creative agency. She's now in the UK. You guys should catch up. So I reached out to her and by email and said, hey, congratulations on the move to London. I'm here looking at expanding here and would love to catch up for lunch if you're free. And she emailed back and said, yeah, absolutely, would love to. We arranged a time. And then I emailed back once we confirmed the time and I said, okay, just to let you know, I'm going to have my daughter with me. Can't remember the exact wording. Obviously, people can look it up on Women's Agenda. I think you did a screenshot of the email, didn't you, in the piece? Yeah. So I said, I'm going to have my daughter with me, so if we could just find somewhere with a bit of space for a pram, that would be amazing, because we've all tried to get prams into trendy little coffee shops, and it's a freaking nightmare. So I didn't think anything else of it, and then the next, I emailed her maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then the next morning I was sitting working, and Wade was in the apartment. We were staying in this little apartment in Swiss Cottage, and when you get an email and you just almost go cold, and you go, oh. And he said, what? And I said, I think I just got an email that wasn't meant for me. So what had actually happened is this contact of mine had emailed her assistant instead of me and said, I'm trying to remember the exact wording. She wants to bring her kid, brackets, WTF, can you find somewhere with space for a pram? And I was just like mama bear, like, because the thing that pissed me off most about it is that she didn't know my baby. She didn't know that she'd happily sat on my lap for 6 meetings already that week. It's just the assumption that somehow it was going to be disruptive.
Yeah.
And
well, that's the assumption you'd have the nerve to do this at this point in your life or something.
I don't know what it was.
But also the assumption that somehow that's going to be incredibly inconvenient for her without any. I mean, it's really unlikely that someone is going to make an appointment with, a 2.5-year-old who can't sit still. You're not going to set up a business meeting. You would, and yet there's this assumption that your decision making is so poor that you would sort of sit. Endure that with her.
Yes, like you as a parent, your judgment is so lacking that you would think. So, and obviously I could go on for hours about why this pissed me off so much. But anyway, I emailed her back and I said, look, I don't think this email was meant for me. I'd rather not meet. And I think I said, what did I say? I was very proud of this. What did I say? I think I said to her, I find it difficult to envisage a future where women can successfully combine their businesses or careers with babies if they're not supported by fellow women. And I didn't hear back from her. And on that day, and then the next day she sent me a huge email. And she brushed it off as saying that it was a bit of an in-joke between her and her assistant, that they would say WTF about everything, which just sounded like bollocks to me personally. And she still wanted to meet and apologise in person. I was like, I can think of nothing worse than going and having lunch and apologising profusely for an hour. Thank you. So anyway, a really good conversation. You guys, thank you, published it. I think it did start a valid conversation, but I think much of the conversation was around parents' judgment to know whether or not their kids are actually going to be disruptive or not, and also just acknowledge that sometimes you just have to bring your kids. And I do have to say that was quite a narrow window where I brought Lexi to meetings. When I got back into the Remarkables group, I wasn't bringing her along for a pitch to Woolworths. I think there's a line, and it's for each parent to decide what that line is, and also your requirements. Like, we were in a position that we could afford to have a nanny with Lexi. Maybe if that wasn't the case, I don't know what it would have looked like. Maybe I wouldn't have gone back to work, or at that point, I don't know what that would have looked like. But I was proud of it because I think it raised a really good conversation.
Yeah. And then it goes on as well. I mean, people, you have, school holidays you have to deal with. Work just doesn't disappear. Meetings just don't stop during school holidays.
Yes.
Sometimes it might be the case that you will need to bring kids along with you. And thankfully we also have screens and things that can help with these situations too. But it's, it is going to be a fact of life, particularly as we're at this point where we're really encouraging more women to start businesses.
Yes.
And, the whole sort of out there from various companies is showing support, and that this is what we want to see happen, and we really want to support it. We have to support those women in the day-to-day realities of what it means to run those businesses too.
Can I just address something? And men.
And men, of course, yes.
So Wade, for example, brought Lexi to a meeting in Ireland when she was 12 weeks old, I think. He took her to a meeting with his business deals with universities just a couple of weeks ago. So he's with Lexi on Thursday afternoons, and so he had Lexi on Wednesdays for that first 3 months when I went back into the business. And so his thing now is he's with her on Thursday afternoons, and there was a visiting, what was he, like an expert in education or something from the US, and this guy could only meet on Thursday afternoon. So Wade said, okay, well, I'm with my daughter, are you okay to meet in the playground and she can play and we can chat? And the guy was so excited because he's got older grown-up daughters, and he just thought this was the best thing ever. Lexi got to play in a fancy playground in Darling Harbour. She was happy. So I think it's important that we, and you guys are obviously the queens of this, but it's because I do think we tend to we focus this very much on women, and I do think it's important that we do make it about guys as well. Like my day with Lexi is a Wednesday, and last Wednesday there were 5 dads and 2 granddads down in the playground. And I was like, yes, this is so exciting.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. It's not just about us being allowed brackets or having permission to take our kids to meetings or blend our family with our businesses. It's the guys as well. It's just assumed that it's a women's problem.
Yeah, exactly. And so Georgie actually wrote about this today, and might maybe share a few examples of that, where it's, things that come through structures around schools and preschools and daycare centres and even doctors, where it's sort of assumed that the mother will take the responsibility from the outset.
Yes.
Which
so the piece I wrote today, it was so a friend of mine who's actually written a piece in the Herald today, Lisa Linton, and it basically, she has been waging this war at her kids' school, trying to get the mums and the dads put on the class lists. So I do know this is a Catholic primary school, but at most public schools it seems to be that mums and dads are included on the class list. But at her school it isn't, and it's been something that she has been sort of wanting to change for a long time, and every time she raises it she gets, there's been resistance, and it's sort of, she said to me a few months ago when we were catching up, she's like, I hate that I have to be the troublemaker. But she said, I'm just so tired of all of these things. It's constantly saying, right, so we need women to volunteer at the tuck shop. We need women to, set up for the sports carnival. Hey, mums, don't forget to pack extra lunch for the swimming. And it just reinforces this idea that mums are the parents and responsible for everything. And anyway, she's written a piece in the Sydney Morning Herald to that object. Last week I happened to get a couple of messages privately through Facebook. One was from a mother of 3 girls, and she said just 2 things popped up in the last hour that have just irked me. At the jazz class that she'd taken her daughter to, there was a sign in the family change room saying, mothers, please take your soiled nappies with you. She's like, my husband, the kid's father, had taken them for the last 10 weeks, but do dads not need to take nappies with them, or do they not never be
I'm
told?
just going to leave this shitty nappy on.
Yeah, well, exactly. If they got all the dads.
Exactly. And then another one was a job ad, and she was like, I know the people who own this business and they're lovely, and I know it's not malicious, but it was basically like, this is a great retail job for school mums because it's between the hours of 10 to 2. And it just sort of reinforces this idea that, well, that there would be no school, for example, who might balance between their kids' school, but also that, that mums are going to be there, for the school. Just... it isn't the reality. A woman just said to me, I think I'm a fairly reasonable person, but she's like, these things once you start to know, it's really hard to unsee.
Yeah. And it isn't the reality, but at the same time, it is going to continue being the reality if it's constantly reinforced.
It's not challenged.
It's part of.
And I mean, the thing is, about this as a school parent. So my eldest daughter is in year 2 and our middle is in kindergarten. So I've sort of had a couple of years now of experience with schools. And it's definitely true. In both of my daughter's classes, they have had dads come in for reading group. But it's sort of definitely the...
Is it a novelty almost? Is it when
well,
that happens,
actually, it's not fair because in my daughter's kindergarten class, they're basically done it all. Once a fortnight, they've done it. So it's not... I can tell you afternoon because shock horror, I work. But when I am there, it is really, really rare that there's always a dad. There would always be at least one dad in the school, but this is a really big school and it is very rare. And it is rare that the dads come on the excursions or that they do, I haven't yet had a male class parent. And the class parent job is big. I mean, they are responsible for sending the emails that they send are huge, the details that they're on top of. And it's always, in my narrow experience, it's always been mums taking on those roles. And I think, it is the way that our schools work. Women do fulfil so much of the emotional and logistical labour. There was orientation for the new kindergarten students last week. Can everyone please bring a plate? There's 10 people who are bringing plates. All of them are women. It's that sort of thing. And I don't want to be...
The unpaid labour, the tuck shop duty. I had the best advice from a friend. She's like, just don't volunteer for the tuck shop. She's like, it's not a great networking thing. It's not a chance to meet other people. It doesn't really work like that. It just is really thankless. So volunteer to be the class president, whatever that is, but don't do the tuck shop duty.
I've never, and I don't know whether I'm just looking in the wrong place, but I've never seen a roster for volunteering at the school canteen. So I actually have a feeling it's a small business that's run externally because I've never heard about any parents doing it, but I'm just keeping that on the low
The
down.
parents revolted.
Because I feel like there are enough opportunity. I do feel like even as a working parent, I am at school a lot. There's just so many reasons to be there. And I think if that's not shared, my husband does, we do split that and he tries to get off work as frequently as he can to attend assemblies and sports carnivals. But if it falls on one parent to do all of that, you'd have no time for anything else, let alone your career.
All right, we do need to start to wrap up because we've been talking for a long time, but I'm not going to close this conversation until we get some tips on how to get organised. What should we say? Before Christmas. Let's say before Christmas. What do you think of artificial deadlines like that anyway? Are they good deadlines to have? I mean,
think they're
artificial
realistic
in the sense that, you don't really have to do everything by the end of the year. It doesn't have to look like that. You don't have to set goals at the beginning of the year. It's just something that we do because it is a nice confined space of time, I guess. But what would be your suggestions to try and get stuff done in the next 5 weeks?
Look at panic in your eyes.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's necessarily an artificial deadline. I think it's more like you're creating a deadline. And I think once they're realistic, I think it's gold. I personally actually work really well in like 5 to 6 weeks chunks because it's long enough that you've got some time to actually get shit done, but it's not so long that you go, I'll get it done in 6 months' time. It's fine. I think that's the challenge with annual goals is that you go, I'll get to it later on the year, and all of a sudden, it's December and I haven't gotten it done. So I think a really great thing to do around getting organised, particularly as we think about a new year coming up, is to declutter, whether it's just your desk or your car or the house. I'm a massive fan of Marie Kondo's book around decluttering. And I talk about that in my book as well, but obviously hers goes into a lot more detail. So I think decluttering would be a beautiful thing if there's just one thing to pick off before the end of the year, because then what happens then is you're heading into the new year fresh and light without all that baggage. And the thing with clutter is that it actually creates mental clutter as well. So I think that would be a really, really great one. And another really great one, and I was fascinated when I went to Bali. I thought that everyone would want business advice. So many people are like, how do you do your cook-ups? What recipes do you use? What time do you have to do this? So I think embedding some healthy, productive, efficient habits before the end of the year is quite nice, because then you've almost done the heavy lifting on the bedding in the habits. So then you come into the new year and it's already there. So I know for me, a massive one is to plan my week in advance. So every Sunday afternoon, myself and Wade sit down with their laptops for half an hour and just plan the week. Because otherwise, I was talking to a friend of mine. She's also, her and her partner have business, got a little girl together. And we were talking about the weekly plan and how important it is to communicate and know that each of you knows what your responsibilities are for the week ahead when you've got a child. And I said, otherwise it turns into a shit fight. So I think that this Sunday afternoon, it might be Saturday morning for other people, I think that 30 minutes just to plan the week in advance is really, really helpful as well, because that way then you can be proactive around, you've got too many meetings on a Thursday, we need to shuffle things around, or who's doing daycare drop off on Friday morning, and are you okay to let they be with the deal with a nanny or whatever it looks like, because honestly, just having Lexi has increased our admin responsibility. And you guys are talking about school, like we're not even there yet, but just the admin required around making sure that one human constantly has reliable care. Like just even that alone is epic when you're both trying to run your own businesses. So I think the declutter would be a really great thing if people just want to start getting shit sorted and cleared. That would be really good. When taking time to plan your week in advance at the weekend, really helpful. Because I don't know about you, but if I head into Monday without any decent food in the house, I immediately feel so disorganized. I do a big cook. And actually, it's funny, people listening to this, maybe they're doing their cook up, because this is when I listen to podcasts, is when I'm cooking. Taking the time to get some meals prepped in advance as well makes a massive difference.
And were these things that you did before you had kids as well?
Yeah, actually quite a few of them, they have to have.
Yeah.
There's less margin for error. I think
zero.
with kids, there's
And Fridays, and she is feral. Like I've got like an 8 to 10 minute window when she gets in the door, that if she's not eating, it's like and she doesn't melt down easily, but it's a full on meltdown. So
it's
today,
like me as well, really.
If
I don't get my food within that window, it's
so true.
Everyone will hear it. Yeah.
So today, for example, I normally write my book on a Monday, but today I've got meetings all day in the city, so I actually have her meal on a plate already chopped up in the fridge, so that when I pick her up in daycare on the way home from my meetings today, I just put the plate on the table and she goes for goal. So I think you're right. It's stuff that I did do before, but they're non-negotiables now, because otherwise the wheels just fall off. And it's not fair to her. Like she thrives on routine and having her regular meals, and to take that away from her, I just don't think is fair. She feels so much more supported and also when we're calm. Like if you're running around like a crazy thing, they immediately pick up on that energy and they start to run around like crazy things as well. So yeah, they're non-negotiable. I like how you put that, the margin for error, Georgie.
I think my only issue, because I love decluttering and I really love it, I'm already anxious about Christmas, because I feel like it's like peak clutter season.
Yes.
And they're just even thinking about what we can get our own kids for Christmas. What do they need? They really don't need very much. And I feel like it's this whole exercise in just, do we just spend money that we don't need to spend? And it's going to be stuff that honestly 3 weeks later I'm going to want to throw out.
Yeah, and it takes up so much real estate. Like I couldn't believe once Lexi got to the walking phase, her toys just like bloomed in size. I think something myself and Wade actually talked about a while ago is when we had children. Before we had kids, we said we really want to get them into the practice of giving away some presents giving presents to other people before they get new ones.
Yes.
And whether that's just offloading, and it could be a really nice thing to actually get the family involved in, like to do an assessment of their toys and say, okay, well, there's other kids who really need some toys. What would you like to give away? Because you know you're going to get some toys over Christmas. So
yes, that's an
Lexi's
excellent
too young
idea
to get that now, but that's something we definitely want to do in future, because they just get so much.
They do.
Yeah.
Mind-blowing.
And a final thing for Christmas, I think, is just it is tough with kids, but amongst yourselves or amongst adults, to really think of strategies that are going to limit the stuff that will end up in landfill. So, give food, give chocolate, give wine, give things that are not so great for you, but find other things, or give experiences, or
books as well. Like books always get passed on; they never go thrown.
Yeah. There's other things we can do, or have your Secret Santa thing, or just find a way to really minimise, because people don't want that stuff anyway.
And I also, one of my theories when it comes to kids' birthday parties and also giving presents at Christmas for other kids, books, swimmers and nighties or pyjamas are the things I always go to, because they're always useful. Because kids, in summer, if you're in Australia, kids wear swimmers all the time and they wear out. Pyjamas they always need, because there's always wheat bix on them, or porridge, depending on the season.
Lexi. Holy crap. I was trying to dodge her avocado on toast this morning. I was like, do not bring my clothes before I go out to meetings.
Because I feel like if you give things that are useful, then they're less likely to, or you'll at least get some use out of them before they need to be.
And also the thing with those things, they're easy to re-gift. Like if they already genuinely do have so many gifts of those books or swimmers, it's easy for the parents to then pass on.
The re-gifting circle. And with that, we should definitely wrap up. So we have talked a lot. So thank you so much for coming in, Lorraine.
Thank you for having me. That was fun.
We look forward to your third book next year. And Georgie, thank you once again.
Thanks.
That's a wrap for Talk It Out, the Women's Agenda podcast, powered by Eagle Waves Radio. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and jump on the website for more amazing shows. Catch you next time.